Hello? Come on, let's go. I'll show you something interesting. It's one rather fancy bike, and although it's not rare, it is super popular, and there are plenty of reviews of it, but I consider it my duty to showcase it. Look at this one beauty. Coming in deep blue, the DRZ400S. And I won't be telling you the usual yarn about its controls on the steering bar. I think many of you have seen those. Well, we shall make the review of this bike in the process somehow anyway, but in general this won't be exactly a review. These will be my new impressions of the bike which I had before. And today I have as a minimum 3 questions about it. Number 1. Why is this bike, although getting more and more old, in the market of second-hand bikes, doesn't get any cheaper, but goes up in price? Number 2. Why do so many people really hate it? And number 3 is why no one of the producers has yet made a fully featured analog of it. Of something non-factory here are these blue hand protectors, the Chinese turn lights, and the baggage rack, and these baggage rings. By the way, the tail is also a Chinese one, because it's a nuisance to lose an original tail in the forest. So this Chinese tail is for riding off-road. And one more non-stock part is the carter protection. These are such metal pancakes from AliExpress, which are attached here with glue. That, of course, can be a source of doubt. I don't trust in attaching the bike parts with glue. But in this case, this thing has been working for a few years and is still in place. So maybe this concept is still not too bad. The muffler is the original stock one. And by that tradition, let's start it and listen to this marvelous engine voice. Again, I haven't switched to neutral. What is this? It's a nice sound, single cylinder, 400cc. The muffler is a stock one, it's rather quiet, and for me it's not bad at all. Well, at higher RPMs it could sound better, of course, and in principle the fate of DRZ owners is to install right away some tuning can and to stun the neighbors with a shockwave. In this very case, the guy kept the stock one, and for that, a great respect for him. Sounds of the forest and the silence. However good the engine sound may be, but the summer, birds singing, etc., all this is beautiful. And again, for this review I've chosen a hot day of not less than 30 degrees Celsius, so that to have everything melting again in my boots. Well, I'm starting to get used to it. My thoughts are not working today for some reason. Haven't you meditated today? No, I haven't. Then you should meditate. We can meditate now. Let's meditate quickly. Switch off the camera. So I have meditated a little, opened the chakra, and I hope now the thought will flow. And the thought was the following. I tried to understand how the Japanese arrived to this notable apparatus. In principle, everything started from the air-cooled models. They had 4-cycle bikes for some kind of enduro and cross, yet at the dawn of all these things. Then, when the 2-cycle models started to slowly beat them out, they understood that 4 cycles needed to be moved out of the cross into some kind of other discipline. So in this case we've got some kind of dual sport thing, which in its previous life was DR250 or 350. The previous factory model, it had an air-cooled engine of a corresponding volume, somewhat fewer horsepowers, and by weight it was just about the same, I think just a bit lighter. And then the Japanese have worked away and in year 2000 issued this model, of which many people who don't know of it say that it looks modern even today. As for me, it looks cool. And I also very much like this approach of the Japanese. They did their best to create a machine that doesn't need to be superseded for decades. And they've been reproducing it to this day. They have a kind of money printing machine, they've got the drawings and the machine tools are set, don't need to invest into redesign. This is the ideal option. And why is it being reproduced to this day? Because there are no analogs in the market among any other brands of bikes. Of course, I will listen with pleasure your opinion on this issue. When I tried to find them, I could find none at all. And the entry parameters here are simple. This must be dual sport bike with CC around 400. Well, it can be a bit less, can be more. But what matters here is the power and the force at low gears. Because this is what a dual sport often lacks, especially for some kind of sticky locations. In the mud, marshland and hills, there you need the power and the force on low gears. And the main parameter to shatter all the arguments of KTM and Husqvarna fans is the resource. This bike has got rather long inter-service intervals, and its very resource is just crazy. Practically 100,000 kilometers you can go without doing anything, and to this, the market hasn't been able to juxtapose anything to this day. There are some bikes lighter and more powerful, but they have very little resource. There are some bikes, and there are plenty of them, and for some reason they are being press-produced to this day. They are cool and beautiful, and they do videos about them, how they ride hard on the sand, but for some reason it weighs 200 kilos. But guys, it's the same as you would put with yourself on DRZ a 60-kilogram bore and try to ride some complex and cloggy sections. Their sensations are about the same. And this is why, to this day, nothing has been made cooler than the DRZ. And the second question that I've been tormented with is why is this bike being so much hated? Well, not all people, of course, but I know for sure a large enough group of folks who say DRZ is to plow fields, to plant potatoes, or something of the kind. Well, actually, these folks can be understood too. It's either they have moved from the DRZ to some light, hard enduro bike for local trips and competitions only, or they have moved from an enduro to the DRZ and they don't understand that they want from it. These are the groups of people that normally call it names. Because yes, actually on a cross or enduro track it's not contestable in any way. It is 20 or 30 kilograms heavier than the top KTMs. It's not as powerful and its suspensions are far from the white power suspensions with which KTMs are fitted. Don't you see anything racist in this name? Am I just one to notice? Now, the DRZs by all means are not to be compared with the hard bikes. This is a dual sport. Let's compare it, for example, to a GS. We'll go to a marshland or climb some stony hill, and there you will see that the difference by 60 kilograms of those heavy dual sports that the market now is flooded with is the very factor to determine why you shall get out of the place and they shall be left behind. And, as I have already told you, this bike is not meant for a cross track, and my cross-level skill being that of a ballerina, but this is exactly why we shall now ride hard on it on a cross track. It's interesting, of course, to ride a track on such a quiet and controlled bike. With a stock muffler, it's even sniffing like a Motorola. I'm used on a cross track to hear the roaring of the engine. I still don't know how much I can incline it here. Here, to fly over a shelf is a thing for real crossmen, to which I don't belong. Check this out. These words were prophetic. But one of the pros of this bike, in comparison to heavy ones, you can pick it up like this. Go ahead and try picking up like this, Adventure 950 for example. What I should say is this bike is fully enough to have utmost fun. If you're not a cross fan, if you don't plan to break your arms and legs, as the crossmen do, but just to go on a track sometimes, like this, as I do, right here just a bit, you can fully afford to do that. There are no evil rakes here, nor steep slopes, where the work of suspension would be felt more. But for those little hills that are present here, these suspensions are fully enough. Jumping into bush. But actually it accelerates pretty well. It's because it doesn't shout with its stock muffler, but it quietly sniffs. It is more dangerous because of that, because the speed is high already, but the sound doesn't match it, and you don't feel it, and you keep riding relaxed, but it's getting risky. No, this is pure fun. This is cool, I'm starting to get it. At this moment, when you start to feel euphoria, you should stop it. Otherwise, it's not far from flying away, because I have almost no experience in cross. And the third topic I would like to discuss is why this bike, despite getting older in the second-hand market, is going up in price. Just imagine the situation. There is, for instance, a 20-year-old BMW. It's far from a premium class, and one needs to repair it often. So what's the price of it? 2, 3, maybe 5,000, that if it's in an ideal condition and with a little mileage. And next we have a 5-year-old BMW. I honestly don't know much about the prices for 5-year-old BMWs, but very roughly it can be 5 times more expensive than the 20-year-old one. And next there is this bike. Suppose it's made in 2000 and it's 20 years old. And suppose there is the same model of bike, but it's of 2015, so it's 5 years old. The prices shall be apart by approximately $1,000. I mean, that old one, but clean and with low mileage, will cost about $4,000, for example, maybe 3.5. Then this, almost new one, the 5-year-old, will cost maximum 5, no more than that. Under no circumstances. Can you imagine? There is a difference from cars. And why? I think you all know the answer approximately. Because this one used would be practically no different from a brand new, with the exclusion of rubber items that would be here and there a bit fresher. But upon the rest, by all other parameters, it's absolutely the same. It's worth also talking about the brakes. Of course, they are a bit weak, but on this kind of ground, they could be even smaller. But it's definitely felt on the asphalt. But there are various kind of kits with oversized discs available for the front and rear. It all can be improved and at a good price. By the way, now the fan is humming, which also is an interesting feature of this bike, that it's rather hard to overheat it. Firstly, it's water-cooled. Second, there is a fan, everything's thought of, everything for the people, everything as it should be. What I like about it, these suspensions are rather okay for a dual sport, they're good for the trips, to jump in the hills, and even to fool around at a cross track, although it's not his element at all. I like the exterior and the design, no question about it. It's cool, it looks classy, and as I've already told you, it looks modern to this day. Well, to my taste as a minimum. I like the wheel sizes, 18-21, classy and universal, and there is a lot of rubber for them, aggressive and mild otherwise. There is whatever you like. The seat, for long trips you better of course install a wider one, although it's a pain in the ass, the wider saddles, they cost some incredible money and they're ordered from America, and on top of that you need to pay a 22% tax. That all is too much. One should urgently start to produce the saddles or something. What I don't like too much about this bike is, I would say, nothing. No, there are a couple things that I still don't like. The instrument panel looks rather strange, as though a panel from the Russian Ish bike has made a child with a Casio calculator, and it is this kind of grey and bleak, and in the bright sun you can't see anything here. And in general, I like not the digital but the analog instrument panels with arrows, and they are visible almost always better in any light. And the main thing I don't like about this bike is that they stopped producing it in Europe. Well, they stopped producing it all around the world first, but then the Japanese have realized that people still want it, and they resumed resumed selling it in America and Australia, because the exhaust norms there are not so strict and a bike with a carburetor can still be sold. But as for Europe, Russia and the CIS countries, it's not being sold anymore. And this is my greatest pain. A good place to test the off-road characteristics in the cloggy places. Somewhere on the track there might be a place with not enough space for acceleration, and there is a significant sandy slope ahead. On the first gear, shall it easily climb or get stuck? In principle, the light weight is a factor, and I think it should climb, but that is what we are about to witness. As easy as eagles cleave the air. And this is why the weight matters. By the way, this very slope I tried to climb without much acceleration on a 701 Husqvarna, which is 20 kilograms heavier, and got stuck, although the rubber there was worse. But this one just now, in general, it has climbed well, although later I might receive some beating for destroying the shells of this track from Maxim Evgenievich, who takes care of this track. On the other hand, it all was done for the sake of science, and just maybe he will understand and forgive us. Oh, snap. No, steel motocross is not my thing. But again, when the bike is light, it's not as bad at all. By the way, this is the very case when these hard hand protectors don't protect the levers at all. They just turn upwards and that's it. And sometimes, even so, they can make a hand stuck, which could lead to injury, so I prefer the soft protectors. So that you understand how much the owner of this bike loves all the stock options, or just doesn't care doing anything about it. Here even is present the ecology system that improves the exhaust, which comes from the factory. This is a thing that they eliminate first of all. Everyone who purchases this bike, but here it is in its place. Of the problems that go with this bike, and generally I like to discuss the problems of Japanese bikes, because there are 2 or 3 problems in total related to all of them. It's totally unlike cars, where a million things can happen, something somewhere can break, but the bikes, for example DRZ, I think these are 3 things. There may be a problem with fasteners that may turn out after 100,000 km, but equally they may not, but better leg tight the bolts in several places, including some inside the engine. One more, there may be a problem with electrical system. In high temperature, the stator may burn out. And the third problem is that the Japanese spare the grease at the factory. It is recommended to dismantle the steering system and the progression of the rear suspension, and to grease the bearings there with additional amount of the right grease. And if you drive in a rainy weather or in wet places, I would recommend doing this at least once per season. And then your bearings will live a long life, and this is much cheaper than buying new ones and change them. And one more issue about these bikes that makes me nervous, especially for the lovers of marshlands and fording, some river crossings that of course can be found in off-road trips, and of course the real travelers, even if they have a bridge by the side, they still try to cross the river by fording, feel themselves real men. In this case there is one problem, the lid of the air filter, it's attached with the 3 twist knobs, well, or not attached at all. And in principle there is a sealing ring here, but quite often it leaks, and it needs to be taken care of, to be greased with something, so that the water does not by any means get there, because this line of fording would be rather low. And if the big dual sports normally have here a hard case, and the snorkel is here under the seat, then DRZ can have leaks here, so this needs to be taken care of. And also there are guys who are fans of tuning, who like to unleash the potential of so that to maximize the air intake, and this is the worst place to make these holes. Well, it is an option, of course, if you make a supermoto out of it and use it only on the asphalt, but even at that, if you fall into some kind of rain pool, or having taken water from the rain pour and from the splashes from the cars around, there is a chance of filling your carburetor with water. So don't do that. So you can cut things, but over there under the seat, where the original snorkel is the best place to do it. And for the lovers of asphalt, I should note that the bike feels perfect on the road, both on the highway and especially in the city. More than that, in a city it will be far more comfortable than the powerful 1-liter sport bikes. With its high seat you can perfectly see all around, and the high clearance allows to ride the roads that are far from ideal and go over the curbs. And the power is fully enough for safe maneuvering. And it's not coming in excess like in sport bikes. When you turn gas by 1 mm and you find yourself going immediately 150 km in a city streets, on a highway this bike stands surprisingly stable, even despite the cross rubber. Although, of course, I wouldn't recommend it for long trips. A narrow, rake-like seat and a cruising speed just over 100 will not let you fully enjoy your long-time presence on the road. Here, by the way, it's worth mentioning that the bike has the SM version, which has the highway wheels from the factory. So if the asphalt is your priority, it's worth paying attention. It also has many advantages over most road bikes. That is, it's lightweight, highly maneuverable. But if you're a fan of sport style, of course it won't fit you. On a track, these bikes are not contestable. Nevertheless, for its high versatility, I've included this bike in my top 5 of the dual sport bikes, and the video about which is there on my channel. The link shall be there in the description. This bike eats around 5 to 6 liters per 100 kilometers. That is, with the interesting riding style, but if you go really mild, you can fit into some 3.5 to 4 liters. But what's not really nice is that it's got a rather small tank, which is only enough to go without refueling about 200 kilometers. For the long trips, it's of course a bit too little. Indeed, for tuning there are big tanks for sale, but that is already a rather serious investment. On the other hand, you should note that for this bike, the tuning items for long trips are much more affordable than those for the modern KTMs. The same 690s and 701s Husky. This one has got the classic tank and the carburetor, which makes all things a lot simpler. When you got the injector, the pumps and the tank somewhere in the rear, with a filling hole here, like 690 precisely, it's more expensive to buy the tuning items for that, because the very fueling system setup is rather complex. So what about DRZ? It is still unsurpassed and the only one of its kind. It doesn't have analogs in the market. So if you were lucky enough to find a live specimen, I envy you with my whole soul. For whom is this bike the best fit? I think for the guys that have got the license only recently. They fancy everything and they haven't determined yet the type of bike they want to ride. And they want to check out them all. The DRZ unites it all in one. This is an excellent trainer for a student. Well, and some tourists on some kind of off-road who know what they want from the bike, what kind of weight and what kind of power. This will be an ideal choice for those as well. Well, and I'm building my hybrid of DRZ and the DR650. About that, you can watch a few videos on my channel. I will soon post the full report of what I have accomplished. With this is all for today. Thank you for watching. Subscribe by all means and stay with us. There's a lot of interesting stuff ahead.